If you love thrilling mysteries, step into the unknown. Join the hunt, uncover the secrets, and feel the suspense. Don't forget to hit subscribe, and be part of the VeeQuest journey. Rain fell hard against the windows, drumming like 1,000 tiny fists. Every crack of thunder shook the fragile glass panes of the old house that Amelia had just moved into. It stood at the very edge of town, surrounded by whispering trees and overgrown weeds that seemed to move even when there was no wind. The locals had warned her not to rent it. They said strange things happened there, that lights flickered on their own, and that people who stayed too long started hearing voices at night. Amelia didn't believe in ghost stories. She needed a cheap place to live, and this creaky house with its dusty charm suited her budget perfectly. She told herself that the stories were just small-town superstitions, passed down to scare newcomers. Her first evening was quiet. She unpacked a few boxes, made tea, and sat by the window watching the lightning flash across the sky. The living room smelled faintly of damp wood and old wallpaper, but she liked it. There was a certain coziness to it, the kind that makes you want to wrap yourself in a blanket and forget the world outside. When the clock struck 11, she decided to go to bed. The bedroom was upstairs, small and plain, with an antique wooden bed and floral curtains that fluttered even though the windows were closed. She turned off the lamp, crawled under the covers, and listened to the sound of rain. Then it came, faint at first, like a breath brushing past her ear. "Greater than, you're not alone, Amelia." Her eyes shot open. The voice was so soft she almost thought she imagined it. The storm outside grew louder, the thunder booming right above the house. She sat up, her heart thudding. "Hello?" she whispered. No answer. Only the creaking of the old floorboards and the constant patter of rain. She shook her head. "Probably the wind," she murmured, trying to laugh at herself. She lay back down and pulled the blanket tighter. But then she saw it, a tall, still shadow standing near the corner of her room. It wasn't moving, yet it didn't belong to anything she could see. Her breath caught in her throat. Slowly, she reached for the bedside lamp and switched it on. The light filled the room. The corner was empty. No shadow. No movement. Nothing but the gentle hum of rain. "Get it together, Amelia," she whispered. "You're just tired." But even as she tried to calm herself, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was watching her. The air felt heavy, colder than before, like someone had opened a door to a winter night. When she finally fell asleep, her dreams were restless, flickers of dark hallways, whispering voices, and a figure just out of sight. Morning light crept through the curtains, waking her. The storm had passed, leaving behind a gray, misty calm. Amelia stretched and stepped out of bed, only to freeze mid-step. There were wet footprints on the floor. They started from the side of her bed and led straight to the window. The glass was shut tight, and the floor beneath was perfectly dry. She knelt, touching the marks, damp and cold, like someone had walked through rain before standing right beside her bed. Her hands trembled. Maybe it's a leak," she whispered. But when she looked up, there was no trace of dripping water, no puddle, no explanation. The rest of the day she tried to convince herself there had to be a logical reason. The house was old, after all. Old houses creaked. Old houses leaked. And sometimes, old houses whispered. That night, Amelia left the lamp on. The warm yellow glow made her feel safer, even though shadows still gathered in the corners. Around midnight, as the clock ticked softly, she began to drift off to sleep. Then she heard it again. "Greater than, you shouldn't have come here." The voice was closer this time. Low, raspy, almost inside her head. Amelia's heart pounded. "Who's there?" she demanded, sitting up. No answer. Just silence. Then, a sound she couldn't mistake, a slow, deliberate breathing from under her bed. She froze, unable to move or scream. Every instinct told her not to look. But curiosity clawed at her mind. Very slowly, she leaned over the side of the bed and lifted the blanket edge. Darkness. And then, a whisper, right at her ear. "Greater than, found you." Amelia screamed and turned on the lamp, but there was no one there. The room was empty. Only the rain outside knew what had just happened. Amelia barely slept after that night. Every creak of the old house sounded like footsteps. Every gust of wind whispered her name. She told herself it was all in her head, but deep down, she knew the house was not as empty as it looked. The next morning, sunlight broke through the curtains, weak and pale. The wet footprints from the night before were gone. She almost wished they were still there, at least then she'd know she wasn't losing her mind. Trying to distract herself, she decided to explore the house in daylight. Maybe she'd find an explanation, loose floorboards, hidden vents, something. She started from the living room, searching behind old furniture and dusty shelves. Everything looked normal until she noticed a small wooden door half hidden behind a tall bookcase. It was narrow and covered in cobwebs. She pulled it open, coughing as dust clouded the air. A narrow staircase led upward into darkness. The attic. Each step creaked beneath her as she climbed. The air grew colder, heavier, almost like it didn't want her there. When she finally reached the top, she found a large, dimly lit space filled with forgotten things, broken chairs, faded portraits, boxes stacked to the ceiling. Something caught her eye. A small wooden chest in the corner, carved with initials that had almost faded away, LR. She knelt beside it, brushing away the dust. Inside were old toys, a cracked mirror, a porcelain doll missing one eye, and a leather-bound diary, its cover torn and edges yellowed. Curiosity won over fear. She opened it carefully. The first page read, "Greater than, this diary belongs to Lena R." Amelia flipped through the pages. The handwriting was neat at first, cheerful even. The entries spoke of school, friends, and how much Lena loved living in this house. But as Amelia turned more pages, the tone darkened. Greater than, something is wrong with the house. At night, I hear someone whisper my name. Amelia swallowed hard. The next entry was worse. Greater than, the shadow man comes when it rains. He stands beside my bed. Mom says I'm dreaming, but I know I'm not. He told me he wants to keep me company forever. Amelia's blood ran cold. The final entry had only one line, shaky, rushed, like it was written in fear. Greater than, he's under my bed. Her fingers trembled as she closed the diary. She backed away, heart hammering. The wooden floor creaked loudly behind her. Hello, she whispered. No one answered, but the air in the attic seemed to shift, like something invisible had just moved past her. A faint whisper brushed her ear, almost mocking. Greater than, you read her words. Amelia stumbled down the attic stairs, clutching the diary. She ran to the kitchen, poured herself water, and tried to steady her breathing. Her mind raced. Lena, the previous resident, must have experienced the same thing. That night, Amelia made a decision. She set up her phone camera on a tripod facing her bed. If something's really here, she said aloud, I'll catch it on video. She left the lamp dimly lit and tried to sleep, though her nerves screamed otherwise. For hours, nothing happened. Just the steady tick of the clock. Then, around 3 a.m., the temperature in the room dropped. The light flickered once, twice, and went out completely. Darkness swallowed her. Greater than, you can't record what you can't see. The whisper came from nowhere and everywhere at once. The blanket tightened around her legs, like invisible hands were gripping it. Amelia thrashed, gasping for air. The light from her phone blinked red, then turned off. When she finally managed to switch the lamp back on, she was alone again. The air smelled faintly of wet soil and smoke. In the morning, her hands still shook as she opened the video. For the first few hours, nothing but her sleeping form. Then, at 3:12 a.m., the screen glitched. The image darkened. A tall, shadowy figure appeared beside her bed, the same spot where she'd seen it before. No face. No eyes. Just a black outline. Then the video cut out. Amelia nearly dropped the phone. She ran outside, desperate for answers. She found the old caretaker who sometimes maintained the property. When she showed him the diary, his face went pale. This belonged to Lena, he said quietly. She was the landlord's daughter. They lived here 20 years ago. What happened to her? Amelia asked, her voice trembling. She disappeared one stormy night. Her father, well, they found him hanging in the living room. He'd gone mad. Said a shadow man told him to do it. Amelia's stomach twisted. The same shadow that haunted Lena. The caretaker looked at her with fear in his eyes. That room you're sleeping in, it's room 12. The same one Lena died in. It was supposed to stay locked. A cold wind passed through them, even though the day was still. Amelia looked back toward the house, the upstairs window was open. And just for a moment, she thought she saw a dark silhouette standing behind the curtain, watching her. Amelia didn't wait for nightfall. After hearing the caretaker's story, she made up her mind. She was leaving the house before darkness came again. She rushed upstairs, throwing clothes into her bag with trembling hands. Every sound in the house, the groan of wood, the hiss of the wind, made her flinch. The diary still lay open on her nightstand. She glanced at it one last time. On the final page, where the words, "He's under my bed," were written, something new had appeared overnight, faintly carved into the paper, as if by fingernails. Greater than, "You can't leave me, Amelia." Her heart nearly stopped. She slammed the diary shut and stuffed it into her bag. When she reached the front door, she grabbed the handle, but it wouldn't turn. She twisted harder. Nothing. The lock wouldn't budge. The key snapped in half. Panic surged through her veins. She tried the back door. It, too, was jammed. Then the windows. All sealed tight, as though the house itself was holding her in place. "Let me out," she screamed. Her voice echoed through the empty halls. That's when the lights began to flicker, slow at first, then violently, casting long, shifting shadows across the walls. The air turned thick and icy, and somewhere upstairs, a floorboard creaked. She wasn't alone. Amelia backed away, her breath coming out in clouds. "Stay away from me," she whispered. From the top of the stairs came a sound, slow, dragging footsteps. Something unseen was descending, step by step. The temperature dropped with each thud. Greater than thump, thump, thump. She stumbled backward into the living room, clutching her phone. Her flashlight flickered weakly, slicing through the darkness just enough for her to see shapes moving in the corner of her eye, long, twisting shadows crawling along the walls. The whisper came again, but now it was everywhere, inside her ears, inside her mind. Greater than, you read her words. Now she's free. Who's free? Amelia stammered. Greater than. Lena. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the figure at the bottom of the stairs. It wasn't the faceless shadow this time, it was a young girl in a white nightdress, her hair hanging wet over her face. Water dripped from her hands onto the floor, leaving dark stains that steamed in the cold air. Amelia froze. Lena. The girl lifted her head slowly. Her eyes were black voids. When she opened her mouth, the whispering voice of the shadow man spoke through her. Greater than, you shouldn't have come here. The lights went out completely. Amelia screamed, backing into the kitchen. She fumbled for the matches and struck one. The tiny flame quivered, revealing only fragments, a flicker of movement here, a face in the corner there, until she saw it. The shadow. It loomed behind Lena's faint outline, stretching tall until its head touched the ceiling. Its body rippled like smoke, its arms too long, fingers tapering into sharp, black points. It stepped forward, silent, heavy, inevitable. Amelia ran. She dashed up the stairs, her lungs burning, her heart hammering in her chest. She burst into the bedroom and slammed the door shut, pushing a chair against it. Her hands shook as she lit every candle she could find. The room glowed dimly, flickering gold and orange. The whisper came through the door, soft at first, then furious. Greater than, you can't hide in her room. The candles flickered violently. One by one, they went out. The last candle flame dimmed just as the doorknob began to turn by itself. Click, click, creak. The door opened slowly, though the chair never moved. Standing there was Lena, pale, dripping, smiling faintly. Behind her, the shadow man towered like a black storm. Greater than, stay, he said in 1,000 voices. Stay, forever. Amelia grabbed the diary and hurled it into the candles. The old pages caught fire instantly. The flames grew fast, hungry, crawling across the floorboards. The air filled with smoke and the stench of burning ink. The shadow let out a sound, not a scream, but something deeper, like the roar of a collapsing cave. The darkness twisted violently, pulling Lena's spirit into itself before bursting apart in a cloud of smoke and ash. Amelia collapsed as the fire spread around her. Her vision blurred. The last thing she saw before losing consciousness was the shadow's shape dissolving into the smoke, and a faint whisper. Greater than, we'll meet again. Dash dash dash. When Amelia opened her eyes, she was lying in a hospital bed. Her head throbbed, her body weak. A firefighter stood nearby. You're lucky to be alive, he said gently. The whole house burned down before we could get in. She swallowed hard. Was anyone else inside? He frowned. No. But there was something strange in the ashes. Looked like someone had written your name, Amelia, right there on the floorboards. Her hands trembled. That's impossible. The firefighter handed her a photo. It showed the burned remains of her bedroom, and in the corner, barely visible through the smoke, a tall, shadowy figure standing beside the bed. Still watching. Still waiting.